So recently, I got a haircut. It's shorter now. Slay move. I posted it on the internet, as one sometimes does, because I thought I looked cool. And somehow I was called a cultist, specifically a trans cultist. Very interesting. I feel like most people, specifically cis people, when they post on the internet, you know, new haircut, new me, feeling myself, they often don't get called a cultist. Ignore the fact I'm currently in a robe right now. I was having a shower and thought this video needed to be made. On my threads, I posted, "Trans mask autumn, here we come." This new cut is giving me insane euphoria. Then some photos of me with the haircut, feeling kind of trans mask, feeling myself, you know, just some mirror selfies. Most people in the comments, I must admit, were super cool. There was a few that I had to delete that were just like uninventive transphobia, you know what I mean? And someone says, "It's way too feminine. My mind is like woman, 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 woman. It screams, look at my ovaries." And then I replied with, because the haircut did kind of look like George Harrison vibes. George Harrison, certified woman with ovaries, according to this commenter. Because real, like, that haircut is, like, look at these side-by-side photos. That haircut does kind of look like that vibe. Yes, I don't have such great mustaches in that first photo, but the haircut, similar vibes. And then they go, "Such an egg," and I'm like, "Please elaborate." And they're like, "Oh my god, it's so obvious that he is a trans woman in denial." That happens more often than you think, by the way, and the irony is not lost on me. I was like, "I'm curious, what do you actually think I am? Don't back down now, I'm intrigued." And then they deflected. I was like, "Seriously, stop avoiding the question. Tell me right now. Tell me right now what you think I look like," because they obviously don't know, which I find really hilarious. I was like, "Stop avoiding the question. You wanted to come on my post to give your opinion, so give it. You'll feel better. What is your problem with me and my haircut?" And then the line that has brought me to this video. It's pretty awful, to be honest, which fits you. You're a trans cultist, a cult that embraces ugliness. And that's what I wanted to get to in all of my questioning. Much like in my previous video where I just basically said, I wish you'd just say what you mean. You know what I mean? Say you don't like me because I'm trans. This is what I wanted to get to. The true meaning behind their comments. This person thinks I'm a trans cultist. In my life, it's fairly normal to go from getting a haircut, posting a photo on the internet, to being called a cultist. Because my haircut apparently screams that I'm some gender, and that's not the gender that they actually think I am, or I don't know. None of it ever makes any sense, but it's actually a plague which is on the internet. So let's get into this. Let's just have a look on the internet. Let's just type in trans cult. Why I'm exposing the trans cult. How the Cash Review exposed the trans cult. Fleeing the cult of extreme trans ideology. Oh my god. Okay, it's been so long since I've reacted to this absolute mess of a human. Arielle Scarcella. A while ago I reacted to is sex preferences transphobic or something? I don't know, it was ages ago, the video that I reacted to. And basically they just were being weird. Like the whole video, they were just talking about trans people and their genitals and like how they react to that. And it was just very odd. So let's see what this video is.
While I was in the hospital, I needed a female nurse to take care of me for safety reasons. Because I was so deep into believing that like sex wasn't real and gender was all that matters and all of the stuff that we hear from gender activists, I was concerned that if I asked for a female nurse, I would offend someone to the point of them wanting to kill themselves.
I've been saying it, I have been saying it, that more and more people were going to be coming out as detrans, as ex-nonbinary, because of all the ridiculous gender ideology bull crap that's been going on for the past 6-7 years. But guess what? I just happened to have found an ex-non-binary woman herself, and she is brilliant.
My name's Kaya, so I actually am doing a lot of policy. Mostly from my own experience, kind of sharing the stuff that I went through and how I was indoctrinated into it. I was introduced to the idea of all this gender stuff in high school. Getting into LGBT stuff, it was also when I realized that I was bisexual, so I was trying to figure that out. But really, when I got to college was when things got crazy. I started meeting people who were identified as non-binary, and I had people telling me that they thought that I was non-binary. You're a tomboy and you're bisexual and you have these like masculine qualities. These are the reasons why I identify as non-binary, is because of this, this, and this. You remind me of me, so then you must be non-binary too. Projection of them, of I'm only validated if you also identify as it, so you have to. TikTok wasn't big at the time, and most of it really was in person. The professors at my school especially who kind of went around and had us all doing, the pronoun introductions and saying everything is valid. Here's a wall of all of the 50 million rainbow flags that you must all memorize. Somewhere in my line of thinking, something went wrong. It wasn't until 2020 that I actually finally came out of it, because COVID happened and I got pulled out of that group. All the colleges shut down. I actually have to thank you, because I kind of finally came out of it and was solidly comfortable with being done with it after I started watching some of your videos. And Blair White, Buck Angel, and all of you guys, and I was like, oh, here are LGBT people saying the same things that I've been thinking. So when I was in college, I was at one point training to be a teacher. I was working in a middle school. Wall of genders that we had in my college, they had in the middle school that I was teaching at in 2018.
Yeah, it started outside of school, then it was like really, really expensive universities, then it was all colleges, then it was high schools, now it's middle schools. And then that's when DeSantis was like,
yeah,
we're not getting the kindergartners.
I do think that part of the reason that I was able to get out of it was because it was like my identity as non-binary wasn't that long lived. It was 1 or 2 years. But I can't imagine someone who starts identifying as a 10-year-old or something, right? If you've gotten to the point where you're identifying as non-binary, you are so deep into all of this. Like, it really is all that you think about. It's not a natural thing, right? You have to constantly be policing pronouns and thinking about how you're presenting, and are people going to misgender you, and all of this stuff.
There's a lot of stuff that is said in this video and none of it has any real meaning. Just because you were around some LGBT people or like non-binary people and they're like, have you thought that you are non-binary? And then that's apparently you have to be non-binary. It just shows an unbelievable weakness in yourself, that you then are like, well, in that case, they've said it, I must be non-binary. Then you're non-binary for a few years, and then you come out of it. How has it irreversibly affected your life, just existing as non-binary? You tried out being non-binary for a bit, and then it wasn't right for you and you stopped. You don't have to go on a video with Arielle Scarcella and be like, Scarcella or whatever her name is, and be like, non-binary and transness is a cult. You don't just have, like, that's an insane jump to do. To go from it's not right for me to it's not right for everybody. And second point, the saying that when you're non-binary, it's all you think about, that's just inaccurate. It's all a lot of other people make you think about. And yes, a lot of people who are trans do have that sort of like trigger word, be a pronoun, because it is something you notice, because then you're like, oh, that's how they perceive me. There's also such a thing like gender dysphoria, gender dysmorphia in a lot of cis communities. If you mention to a cis guy that maybe they look a bit feminine today, even in a way that's subtle and you don't actually mean that they look feminine today, it's just not all you think about. Often it's only the fact that I go online and I go on the internet and everyone is bringing it up. Often I'll make a video, I made a video about coming out as non-binary at work, and people come in the comments so heated being like, that's not real, you can't come out as something that's not real. I just made a video about me coming out of work. You don't have to come in here with that level of heat. Like, chill out. Chill yourself. And if it's what she was thinking about all the time, whether she was being misgendered, whether she wasn't, like, thinking about how you're being perceived, that's her experience. But I hate when people come out here who have detransitioned or who have, just decided they're not actually trans or non-binary anymore, coming out and generalizing the whole population because they've been one of the group and now they have the right to do so. And then people like Arielle will bring them onto a video to speak on behalf of the entire community, which they've just said that they're not a part of anymore, they don't identify with. You can't just do that. It's stupid. One thing I was going to make a video of soon is about how I don't have any dysphoria anymore, and I don't really think about it in my day-to-day life unless someone else brings it up, and usually it's people bringing it up in comment sections and videos like this on the internet. But I actually don't have any like gender dysphoria anymore. Something I was going to do a whole other video discussing and going through whether I don't have gender dysphoria, whether I have some social dysphoria, but what they're saying here just isn't true for the whole community, and they are just generalizing.
A more feminine man, even if you're straight or gay, it doesn't matter. You could be a more masculine woman. You can enjoy dressing up differently and being artistic. It doesn't make you a different gender.
But the idea that, that woman is just this feeling in the void, and you can feel it one day and not feel it another, or you can identify as a tree or a lamp or a zerzim, like, no.
You know, like in a conversation where there's certain topics that come up and you realize the conversation is over because it's gone past the point of insanity. When someone starts bringing up identifying as like an attack helicopter or identifying as like an inanimate object in a conversation like this, you know that it has to be over, because first off, it basically doesn't happen. If there anyone that is out there, they're always put on a massive like pedestal and everyone starts filming them and being like, look, this is the community. But third, if someone does identify as a lamp and someone else identifies a moth and they're in a relationship, it's not hurting anybody, okay? No one is actually being harmed, okay? If you want to call that delusional, where someone identifies in that particular way, specifically like a moth, this is my example, I'm not saying or coming out as a moth, but it could be, something that I think about often. If someone identifies that way, they're not really hurting anyone else, right? Unless they start randomly running around and like headbutting lamps, then you might tell them that's not good for your health. But there is a lot of other delusions, for example, these people that will cause an increase in the rates of violence against trans individuals, or people who have delusions that are supporting the Republican Party in America, for example, as Arielle seems to appears to do, that actually cause increase in violence rates against LGBT community, which Arielle supposedly is a part of, even though I feel like we're allowed to just denounce her from that, so slay. Because they say that I, as a non-binary person, am not a valid part of the community, then you, someone who introduces hate into the community, is also not a valid part. So, but first off, what you're doing is harming people using neopronouns and stuff like that, not harming anyone, having a bit of fun, figuring out what you like to be called. At the end of the day, language is made up anyway.
No, the amount of times I was called transphobic and homophobic and all that stuff. I also was like a crazy racist person at the time too.
Yeah.
But definitely the gender stuff, what trumps the race stuff all the time.
I know, unfortunately. I mean, none of it should trump anything. It all should just be like, we're all here and we just like who we like. And
okay, well, I'm finishing this video because Arielle has started playing the Oppression Olympics and is basically saying that she doesn't like that trans people seem to be getting more attention, or transphobia seems to be like beating homophobia. I don't even know what she's on about.
Now that we understand the genders better, we call those androgynous people non-binary. Like,
so yes, I think there is a mix over between expression and gender sometimes, and the fun part of it is figuring out which is which. For me, I don't know if I particularly think I am any gender. I don't know if it's based on a neurology in my brain or just because I like to express a certain way which is outside of the gender norms and technically counts as gender non-conforming, so therefore identify as genderqueer. I don't know if it's based on biology. I don't know if it's not based on biology. What I do know is that I am not harming anyone by identifying this way. You are harming people by trying to box people. into this particular category. It's the same as when women had to act a particular way, or they were basically sent to asylums and were lobotomized. It's those boxes which are dangerous, okay? I'm going to move on from this because this is not the actual point of the video, but it got me heated and I needed it to get me heated. There are other videos with people just coming in here being like,
forces an identity crisis upon the woman, who is then in a position where she needs to change her identity to accommodate him.
This is mind numbing, okay? I could go through and watch all of these things and I would have already heard every point said to me before, because I have existed as publicly and openly trans for long enough. I know that people think that being trans is just a cult. A cult is a system of religious veneration and devotion directed towards a particular figure or object, or a personal thing that is popular and fashionable among a particular group or section of society. Cult isn't necessarily a bad thing. A cult can be defined as a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or as imposing excessive control over members. So I think the main one they're trying to say is imposing excessive control over the members within that particular cult. We're going to ignore the irony with the gender social construct and how that is basically an excessive control over, and has been in the past, over how people express themselves and interact with society. We'll ignore that because they certainly do. I spent my entire life trying to fight against people who say that I can't identify the way that I want to identify and feel like I should identify with, just based on what feels right. The label non-binary feels right to me. Label gender non-conforming feels right to me. Gender queer. I don't really have a label that 100% fits me, but that type of label does feel the most right for me. I don't know why. I don't need to know why. It's not harming anybody at all. So let's go with this one. A relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange. In that case, okay, slay, call it a trans cult. And if so, I am a member of the trans cult, because from what I have heard by many people who have commented and many people who have interacted with me in real life, they do regard my practices as strange. And by practices, they mean using they them pronouns, or dressing the way I do, or being slightly flamboyant, or just using the label non-binary, which is just, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. It's so insane that we're having these conversations. So, or a excessive admiration of a particular thing. I do have an excessive admiration for the trans community, so maybe I am in the trans cult, because I think all trans people are cool and awesome, and I love them all, and I think we're generally nicer people. That's just my personal experience, but do with that as you will. The irony behind people relating religion to trans people is also not lost on me. We know what many religious people have done and are doing to this particular community, and as well, people who are different and strange. The witch trials and the witch hunts were a thing that was just insane. It was basically just women that were intelligent, and it's just continuing throughout society in different ways. And people like Arielle are basically part of the witch hunt, but for non-binary people. And to bring feminism into it, so if I'm going to be called a cultist, I might as well practice the occult. I'm going to become a trans cultist, but an actual cultist. Like, I'm going to start practicing the occult. So I have to figure out what different occult religions and practices that I feel like fit with me best. After hyping myself up, after getting angry, after getting pissed at these particular individuals. I mean, any Arielle video will do that to me for the right reasons. I am going to practice some occultism. I'm going for like pagan traditions, because not a fan of the, all-knowing, singular. So let's have a look. Druidry, not considered to be a religion. I'm not really feeling the exact religious practices, more like, ideas and worship practices and nature and things like that. So Druidry, metaphysical ideas which together provide an initiatory spiritual path, an inspirational philosophy, and an ethical way of living. Druidry tends to be free of doctrine and dogma. Diversity is tolerated. There are no set religious texts. Druids often build personal, albeit highly developed ethical codes based on concepts of justice and law of harvest. Druids try not to cause harm, evolved in meditation, peacekeeping, and environmental activism. Okay, I love everything else, okay? I absolutely love everything else. But try not to cause harm, peacekeeping. I'm in my trans rage era and my villain era, so I don't know about that. I want to be manifesting the downfall of TERFs, okay? Like, that's where I'm at. I kind of want to pick and choose things, which I know people hate out of like following different religions and stuff, but sometimes there are questionable things in like almost every type of practice and religion. So I want to take the things that would improve my mentality, that would be something fun, something spiritual, something like meditation, which I kind of like from Druidry, but mix it with the slight darkness of like manifesting the downfall of bigotry. I like the storytelling, divination, natural healing, psychotherapy, like guided meditations that they do. You know what I like the sound of? Heathenry. New religious movement, practitioners model it on the pre-Christian belief system adhered to by the Germanic peoples. It's polytheistic, centering on pantheon of deities from pre-Christian Germanic Europe and the cosmological views of these past societies. I think that's pretty cool, but honoring deities is not the vibe exactly for me. A heathen community assemble in small groups known as a kindred of hearts to perform their rites outdoors or in specially constructed buildings. Oh, that's really cool. The ethical system honor personal integrity, loyalty, while beliefs about afterlife vary and are rarely emphasized. Hellenism, which is the Greek reconstruction, looking at the Greek gods, yet again, cool, but not exactly the vibe that I'm going with. Strugaria, oh, an Italian witchcraft religion, very interesting. Yet again, very god worship, shamanism, practitioner reaching altered states of consciousness in order to perceive and interact with what they believe to be a spirit world. Sumerian paganism, I made a video previously about this, and there was Ishtar and Inanna, one of the gods in ancient Babylonian paganism, which is in Sumer. So yeah, I've looked into Sumerian paganism, very interesting stuff. Yet again, a lot of god worship, not exactly the thing that I'm looking for. So witchcraft, practice of and belief in magical skills and abilities exercised by solitary practitioners and groups. Broad term, varies culturally. I do be loving some witchcraft. Casting spells in witchcraft occupies a religious divinatory and medicinal role, passed by many methods such as by inscription of runes or sigils on an object to give magical powers, by the immolation or binding of a wax or clay image. Cool stuff. Okay, I'm here for witchcraft. I always have been, but you know, extra here for witchcraft after reading this again. So Wicca is an initiatory pagan witchcraft, form of mystery religion. Oh, that's cool. Broad range of pagan practices, Gardnerian and Alexandrian initiatory traditions, bodies of collective experience and teachings developed and handed down over many decades. So the basic unit of Wicca is a coven, a very small, closely knit group of initiates who worship and work magic together. Draws on the understanding human beings are very much part of nature. So it says it may take a time to find a good coven. At the moment, I'm a bit of a loner, so I also just don't want to rely on other people to be able to practice this type of stuff. But witchcraft seems like it can be a bit more individual. But there is bits that I like out of all of these. I kind of want to look into magic religion. So I have come across something which I absolutely am here for. So chaos magic. You can be a chaos magician. It emerged in England in the 1970s as a wider neo-pagan esoteric subculture, the Illuminatis of Thanateros and the Temple of Psychic Youth. Heck yeah! This is what I'm talking about. The founding figures of chaos magic thought that other occult traditions had become too religious in character and attempted to strip away the symbolic, ritualistic, theological, or the otherwise ornamental aspects of these occult traditions. And I agree so much. When I read that, I was like, I need to keep reading. This is great. They have a set of basic techniques they believe to be the basis of magic. Chaos magic teaches that the essence of magic is that perceptions are conditioned by beliefs, and that the world as we perceive it can be changed by deliberately changing those beliefs. And you can use the magic as a tool, create your own idiosyncratic magical systems, blend different things like practical magic, quantum physics, chaos theory, and anarchism. So I'm a space imaging scientist. I do engineering and that type of thing. I did a physics degree. I believe that there is more to quantum physics. So when I heard that this mixes some of the unknowns of physics and of science, for example, the quantum physics and dark matter and things like that, when it mixed that in with sort of like occult practices, I was like, this is so cool. For example, I believe that when religion tries to explain something that is already explained by science, you're wasting your time trying to fight that battle. That's just my personal opinion. Slay, go off if you have your own religions that are things that are kind of already explained by science. I believe that if it's already explained by science, then there's no need to try and look into it based on some spiritual thing. But there is a lot of science that hasn't been explained yet. For example, a lot in quantum physics and dark matter and things like that. So you can use a practice or a theory and belief of magics to actually describe things in which science hasn't figured out yet. In the 1960s, the decades that followed Discordianism, the punk movement, postmodernism, and the writings of Robert Anton Wilson emerged and became significant influences for what form chaos magic would take. The first chaos magic organization, Illuminatis of Thanateros, in 1976-77 was announced. So Liber Null was written by Peter J. Carroll, and the Book of Results were written by Sherwin. And they were the first published books on chaos magic, so I'll have to order those. There's also this thing in there called magical paradigm shifting, where you assign different world views to the side of a die and inhabiting a particular random paradigm for a set length of time, like a week or a month. Depending on which number is rolled, for example, one side of the dice you might have paganism, one might be monotheism, the other side might be atheism. So you roll a dice and you can try out a different magical practice or religion, just to kind of try things out. I think that's also a fun thing to do with gender, but slay. So I can try out different religions and different parts of religions that I like within this particular role as being a chaos magician. David Bowie also practiced chaos magic, and part of being a chaos magician is there is this thing called the cut-up technique, where you reorder words and see the meaning out of them and take out certain words and reorder them and see what comes up. He said that the cut-up technique was compared to the randomness inherent with traditional divinatory systems like I Ching or Tarot. So there's arts and crafts involved, and I'm excited to practice. I'm going to be an actual trans cultist, and I'm here for it. Now I need to come up with a chaos magician persona. Yeah. We just explode.